Let's call this meeting to order. It's 7 o'clock, Monday, March 21st, and welcome everybody. Pleased that y'all are here. We have with us tonight Pastor Carrick Butler, Faith Christian Center, 3831 Traymore Point Parkway. I'd invite you up now to lead us in the invocation and pledge. Everybody please rise.
We ask for wisdom, understanding, guidance, and your help on behalf of the leadership of this wonderful city. Lead them and guide them in the ways that they should go so that this city may know unprecedented peace, prosperity, joy, and an outpouring of your goodness. We lift up those of you who may be struggling with any type of sickness or disease. We ask for your healing power to minister to them and restore them to health. And we pray that Smyrna is walking into its greatest days ever, days overflowing with your goodness, your peace, and your love. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor, for being with us tonight. Appreciate it. Item 2 is agenda changes. We don't have any. Before we get to the mayoral report, we got an election coming up May 24th, and I know we have some candidates here for different offices. I'd like to invite you up now to take a couple minutes, introduce yourself, tell us about your candidacy.
Hello, my name is Latonia P. Hines, and I've been before the council before, and I'm here again because I'm running for Ward 2. I have been a citizen here for 20 years, and I've been providing public safety as a prosecutor in this county for almost those 20 years, and I'm so excited to be able to make sure that I continue doing that in this role as a council member of this council. So I look forward to this journey. I look forward to being able to provide my expertise and to give my insight just being a citizen here. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Becky Saylor, and I'm a Democratic candidate for Cobb County School Board in Post 2. My involvement in Cobb County Schools began in 2007 when I taught just up the street at Norton Park Elementary, up off the Church Road on the other side of South Cobb. And since then, my husband and I have been raising children in Post 2 and have been supporting the Post 2 schools through the PTA and foundation as I continue to teach preschool. I'm running because every child deserves a competitive education, and our schools in Cobb County are wonderful, and they can be even better. And as we draw close to the primary, it's important to know a few things about the school board races, just for citizen education. First is that it is a partisan race. Some places school boards are not partisan, but here in Cobb they are. So if you want to vote for a Democratic candidate like me, you'd have to pick a Democratic primary ballot. And also the posts have changed since the last school board election. So that's particularly impacting Smyrna. A lot of Smyrna has been divided now into Post 2 and 6, whereas previously it was mostly Post 2. So I encourage everyone to look at their My Voter page, which has been updated, to see what post you're in. Also, some people that were in Post 3 and voted just 2 years ago will be voting for Post 2 now, so they won't be waiting the 4 years. And then redistricting does not impact your school attendance zones, so you might be voting for a post where your children do not go to school. That's not impacting any of the redistricting there. You can find me on Facebook or BeckySaylor.com, and I look forward to learning more about what people think about schools here and how we can help support our families.
All right, good evening. My name is Michael Starks. I'm a candidate for Ward 2. I'm very excited for this race. We have 5 individuals running, which is just a great sign in general for engagement within Smyrna, and people want to be vested, want to see us build a strong community. So I wanted to introduce myself in a sort of different way, to talk about my ethical framework. It's what informs how I think about issues and make decisions. So one, I think that everybody has a moral responsibility to everyone else. It starts in our homes, with our families, our neighbors, our towns, and it continues out. 2, I believe that people are entitled to be different. We're born different, we're raised different, we have different perspectives. Difference is good and should be celebrated. 3, I think that there's a fundamental duty to others, and that's to protect them. So with this framework, you have a shared kind of universality plus a celebration of difference, right? I am a returned Peace Corps volunteer, and I do a lot of presentations about the Peace Corps. This framework, when you're talking to younger people, it ends up talking about toilets and the way people use the restroom in other countries. But I really think it can also inform a lot of other issues, including one would be the way that we think about mental health, having forward-looking services, knowing what's coming towards us and saying, there's a mental health crisis. Is it going away post-pandemic? It's not. Young people have problems, right? Could we have health crisis units for the city who can respond to this to protect people and to protect our communities? So I think that's it, but thank you all. Have a good night.
Any other candidates here this evening? Well, thank you all for putting your name forward and running for office. I appreciate you being here this evening. Next is the Mayoral Report. The first item of business is the proclamation and recognition of Women's History Month, and Ms. Susan Wilkinson has that this evening.
It's my honor tonight to read this proclamation by the mayor of the city of Smyrna in recognition of Women's History Month. Whereas Women's History Month recognizes that women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made significant and historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas Women's History Month recognizes that women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home and by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force. And whereas Women's History Month recognizes women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation. And whereas Women's History Month recognizes women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. And whereas Women's History Month recognizes American women who have served our country courageously in the military. And whereas Women's History Month recognizes women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. Whereas the national theme for Women's History Month 2022 is Providing Healing, Promoting Hope, which recognizes the numerous ways women of various cultures across the globe have been providing healing and hope all through human history. And whereas 2022 is the 150th anniversary of the founding of Smyrna, we honor the founding women of Smyrna who have given their time, their energy, their expertise, and their money as community volunteers, elected officials, and business owners, all of which have served to make our city a better place to live. Now, therefore, I, Derek Norton, Mayor of the City of Smyrna, Georgia, do hereby recognize the month of March as Women's History Month to honor women everywhere for their outstanding achievements and invaluable contributions to society. Okay, so with that, I would like to invite all the women that are involved in our community as business owners, leaders, volunteer workers, everything. I just want to recognize and thank everyone for all the things, all the women, for all the things they do in our community. And then I have a special guest here that I want to recognize, her mom, who was in honor of Women's History Month, I want to recognize a former Smyrna resident, Sarah Scott, who embodied the theme for providing health and hope to her community. In 1983, Mrs. Scott founded the Cobb Service for the Blind, later known as Blind and Low Vision Services, and eventually it is known now as the Vision Rehabilitation Services of Georgia. The organization provides exams, counseling, training, equipment, and support for the visually impaired, blind, and low vision of Georgia. And Mrs. Scott's daughter is here, Elaine Davis, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what her mother did. Thank you. So, everybody come.
Thank you very much. My mother is with me tonight. This is her cane, and this is one of her paintings. I needed something of her to be here. She was a very good friend of the council, and the city council was a friend of hers. Former Mayor Max Bacon was with her when she formed her first board. He was on it. Former Mayor Harold Smith was also on her board. Former council member Pete Wood was on our board for many years and served as chairman of our board. My mother's motto was to teach people to see another way. She did not become blind until she was in her 40s. She had retinitis pigmentosa, and if you know anything about that, you lose your sense of color. You can no longer see colors. But she painted this after she lost her sense of color. I just celebrated my 56th wedding anniversary. I had daisies in the wedding, and she painted this picture for us for one of our anniversaries. She couldn't see the yellow. She would say to my dad, "Pass me the yellow paint," and he would. Or "Pass me the green paint," and he would. My mother never took no as an answer from any politician, ever. From the state, to the senators, to the council, to the Cobb County government. They were all her friend. They supported her. And here we are. We serve 5 counties? 30 counties, pardon me. We serve 30 counties now, and we're home-based right here in Smyrna, Georgia, and we're known everywhere. If you don't know us, check us out on our website. And thank you so much for honoring her. She passed away in 2010, and one of the last things she said to me in her nursing home, "Did I leave the agency in good hands?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am. You did." I have 2 of our co-directors here tonight with me. Thank you. Thank you.
I would love to have a picture.
Oh, okay.
And also with the other women.
Okay.
I want y'all all to come. They may not want to.
All right.
Let's see.
Where do you want me to be? Here.
This is good.
Are you?
I'll just-
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening. Really appreciate you.
I also want to thank all the other women. Just stand up because y'all are all here, I know, and they do so much for our community.
The next item on our Mayoral Report is item B, Proclamation and Recognition of Education and Sharing Day. And our Mayor Pro Tem, Tim Gould, has that this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor to be able to read this proclamation, and can ask Rabbi Zaltzman to come on up and perhaps tell us a little background about what we'll hear here in a moment. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. Good to be back. That was beautiful. Thank you. We actually just came off the Jewish holiday celebrating our heroic Jewish women, so works well on the calendar too. So that was beautiful. Thank you. As we approach the Jewish holiday of Passover, Friday evening, April 15th, let us recall the ancient lesson of Passover today. and let us ensure that the meaning of Passover becomes visible in our daily lives. The biblical narrative of the Exodus is the story of the Israelites being redeemed from Egypt. The biblical Hebrew name for Egypt is Mitzrayim, which means limitations and boundaries. Today, we are all enslaved to personal limitations, and each of us is working towards redemption from those obstacles that limit us and limit our potential to create a better future for ourselves, our families, our city, and the entire world. Let us pass over our personal shortcomings and let us rise from despair to freedom. The Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem M. Schneerson, taught that every individual, and in fact, every individual action has an impact on the entire universe. The Rebbe emphasized the importance of education and good character and instilled the hope for a brighter future into the lives of countless people in America and across the globe. The Rebbe taught that education in general should not be limited to the acquisition of knowledge and preparation for a career. Instead, the educational system must pay more attention, and indeed the main attention, to the building of character with emphasis on moral and ethical values. The Rebbe was also passionate about establishing a moment of silence in the school systems across the country. The students use this time to think about God, their faith, and their purpose and mission in life. This one moment on a daily basis has a profound impact on the students' day and helps shape a moral compass for the rest of their lives. Over the past 4 decades, the U.S. Congress has set aside Education and Cheering Day, and it is proclaimed annually by presiding U.S. presidents on the anniversary of the Rebbe's birth, in tribute to his commitment to teaching the next generation of Americans the values that make our country strong. The day provides Americans the opportunity to pause and recognize our responsibility to ensure our young people have the foundations necessary to lead lives rich in purpose and fulfillment. Mayor Derek Norden just signed a proclamation designating Sunday, April 12, 2022, as Education and Cheering Day in the city of Smyrna. It's a call to all residents of Smyrna to reflect on the vital role of education in preparing the youth to be the leaders of tomorrow, with an emphasis on inspiring them of their moral and ethical obligations to serve a cause greater than themselves, and instilling in their minds and their hearts the an empowering message that one act of goodness and kindness can tip the balance of the world in favor of positivity to usher in an era of redemption for the entire world. May our city serve as a beacon of light for people of all faiths and walks of life. May the city of Smyrna help achieve the goals so powerfully stated in our Pledge of Allegiance, so that America is truly one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I got it right this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You did great.
I'm Canadian, so I'm working on the pledge.
We appreciate you being here as always.
So I'm going to read the proclamation, and then I'll come on down there, okay? Thank you so much. A proclamation by the mayor of the city of Smyrna in recognition of Education and Sharing Day, April 12th, 2022. Whereas a quality education is one of the significant foundations for the continuing success of our state, our country, our society at large, and the city of Smyrna, we strive for the betterment of all our citizens through an increased focus on education and sharing. And whereas, through providing the possibility of an excellent education for all, especially children, with which to gain knowledge through rigorous study, we can create hope for a brighter, kinder, and more united, prosperous future in the lives of so many. And whereas, one of the leading global advocates for advancement of education, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, of righteous memory, stressed the importance of moral and ethical education as the bedrock of humanity and the hallmark of a healthy society, and strongly urged the education by reinforced by the inculcation of strong and moral values. And whereas, in recognition of the Rebbe's outstanding and lasting contribution toward improvement in world education, morality, and acts of charity, he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, and the United States Congress has established his birth date as a national day to raise awareness and strengthen the education of our children. And whereas April 12th, 2022 will mark the 120 years since Reby's birth and the date with which the celebrated across the United States and around the globe in tribute of Reby's vision, guidance, and leadership. And whereas for more than 40 years, the President of the United States has recognized and honors Reby's vision each year on the day by proclamation in, quote, Education and Sharing Day, USA. Now, therefore, I, Derek Norton, Mayor of the City of Smyrna, Georgia, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 to be Education and Sharing Day in the City of Smyrna and call upon government officials, educators, volunteers, and citizens to reach out to those within our communities to work and create a better, brighter, and more helpful future for all. Derek Norton, Mayor.
Thank you. You did pretty good for those names, I gotta say. No,
Practice
you
for
did.
at least 10 minutes before he came down here.
How do you spell Lubavitcher?
Thank you for being here and for bringing that to us. That concludes our mayoral report. Item 4 is land issue zonings annexations. We'll wait for Mr. Gould to come back up. Take your time. You don't get to keep that, Mr. Gould. Item A, 2022-072. This is a public hearing. Zoning request Z22-001. Allow rezoning from R15 to GC, 0.66 acres, land lot 631, 2979 and 2989 Jonquil Drive, the Woodbury Group, LLC. Mr. Bennett, the background, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David Woodbury, LLC is requesting a rezoning of the previously mentioned 2 lots from R15 residential to GC general commercial for the ability to use the existing structures for commercial and office purposes. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval by a vote of 6-0 at the February 14th, 2022 meeting. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Martin for further.
Good evening. Yes, the Woodbury Group is seeking rezoning of 2979 and 2989 Jonquil Drive from R15 to GC for uses office space and general commercial activities. The subject property is highlighted in blue. It's on the eastern side of Jonquil Drive down towards Corn Road. It is currently 2 single-family homes today. They're proposing to convert those to commercial uses. One of the commercial uses is located across the street on Jonquil Drive. They'll be located over to this property, and that commercial space will then be included into the quad development that y'all approved for the restaurant district earlier or later last year. The subject property has a future land use designation of moderate density residential. They're proposing to change that to community activity center, which would be consistent with the rest of Jonquil Drive. These are the surveys of the subject property. These are existing buildings. They're not proposing demolition. They're proposing to leave them and then retrofit the subject properties with the necessary improvements for commercial development. There's existing driveways, existing parking areas. These are the subject properties and then adjacent properties along Jonquil. Community Development is recommending approval of the rezoning from R15 to GC with following conditions. Number 1, that the property should be brought up to ADA and parking requirements for commercial occupancy. Number 2 is a list of prohibited uses on the subject property. And this is a continuation of those uses. And this is all in your staff memo. And that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions of Rusty?
I got something real quick. And I think I understood this right. They're proposing to leave the 2 structures?
They're going to leave the 2 structures. They're going to move one existing business on Jonquil Drive on the west side, move it over to the east side.
Okay. Is the intent to make these 2 structures commercial?
Yes. So they're residential and they'll be converting to commercial. There's 3 remaining residential properties, zoned properties on that eastern side, and I'll go back to it up here. It'll leave that corner lot as the last remaining residential lot on Jonquil Drive.
Any other questions of Rusty? I'd like to invite the applicant up.
I do. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm David Woodbury with the Woodbury Group. And as Mr. Martin described to you guys, our plan is to move one of the companies across the street, which is the plumbing company, Star Plumbing. They're outgrowing their building, their current building. And to add a little clarification, we are actually pricing the repair of rehab of one of those buildings versus new construction. Both those houses have been vacant for years and need a lot of repair. And so we're actually pricing it both ways. And we've engaged an architect and going back and forth on that. So it is possible that we may build new there for them if the numbers and the usage work out in that manner. But what we're going to be doing is an upgrade from what is there now. And we're also going to be gaining a parcel to expand the quad. And currently, to give you a brief update on that, we are in negotiations, final negotiations with tenants to go into our 2 existing buildings that we're going to keep and repurpose, and for 2 restaurants. And the common area, we should start work on that in the summer. And we'll have 3 or 4 other concepts, smaller concepts, food container type concepts in the quad also. And I hope to be up and operating by the end of the year for the smaller concepts, and the full service restaurants would be coming online next year. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Woodbury? Ms. Wilkinson?
Thank you. So I'm just trying to understand it, and also the audience understand it. So the businesses that are currently across the street is where the restaurants are going to be. Is that correct? And then the businesses will move to the 2 properties that we're.
There's one business. It's the plumbing company across the street. The majority of that property across the street will be this development called the Quad. And then there are 3 additional parcels that are not a part of it. One of those, that first adjacent parcel, is a plumbing company, and they are moving across the street into one of these homes that are up for rezoning tonight.
Okay. Okay. So is any of these that we're voting on going to be part of the quad as well then, or?
No,
no? Okay.
They're across the street.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But the reason you're doing it is because of the restaurant quad. Okay.
Exactly. It kind of expands that project, and it gives the business a room to grow and still stay in Smyrna. Because otherwise they're outgrowing their space and would have to either relocate to another business location in Smyrna or outside of Smyrna.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Woodbury.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. I'd invite anybody who'd like to speak for or against this item to come and be sworn in now. Our city attorney. Okay. State your name and address for the record, please, and let Mr. Cochran swear you in.
My name is Montserrat Knowlton, and since the time that we learned about this quad area, I have been letting a lot of people know. I have posted it on Facebook. I have posted it on other websites, and just like a good thing happening in that area of Smyrna, where people can go for entertainment. This new plan, it kind of changes the vision, that because I thought that whole area was going to be the quad, the 2 houses, the lot at the corner, and the Cantrell a shop that I noticed that now it's empty, and I thought that was going to also be part of the quad. So this is something totally new. We have not heard about this new plan before, and I think that we need a little bit more information on it as far as where things are going to be. I don't quite understand the situation, and I'm sure that the developer of the project, has a good understanding of this move for a plumbing business to be moved there. But I thought that was going to be an entertainment area, and that's how it was presented to council the last time that we heard about that in a council meeting. So I think I would like to hear more about it. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak for or against this agenda item? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. This is in Ward 2, and that's currently vacant. We'll turn it over now to Mr. Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Mr. Woodbury. We're excited about this project. I know it's been on the books for a while and lots of discussion, so look forward to great things in Ward 2. With that, motion do pass.
Have a motion do pass, seconded by Mr. Pickens. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Woodbury. We're looking forward to that development, and I know it takes a while to put all the pieces together, but hearing that it's going to be done, or I'm not going to hold you to it, but the target being the end of the year is exciting. Thank you. Item B, 2022-163, approval of the request for a name change for Elevate at the Battery, located at 2330 Cobb Parkway, to Elevate 23 by the applicant Tabitha Huber with First Communities Management. Straight name change, right? Don't need a whole lot of background, or do we?
No, sir.
Okay. This is in Ward 1. I'll turn it over to Mr. Pickens.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve 4B 2022-163.
That's been seconded by Mr. Lindley. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 6-0. Item C, 2022-146, plat approval for a 2-lot subdivision within the R15 zoning district, 0.91 acres, land lot 487, 1132 Church Street, Tony Hester. Mr. Bennett, the background, please.
Yes, sir. The applicant is requesting approval to subdivide their property at 1132 Church Street into 2 single-family residential lots. The applicant plans to subdivide the property within the requirements of the R15 zoning district, so no rezoning is required. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval by a vote of 7-0 at the March 14th, 2022 meeting.
Rusty, you want to come up and give us the details?
Sure. This is a real simple request. They are requesting to subdivide this lot. I'm sorry. To subdivide this lot. The first lot will front on Church Street. The second lot will front on Love Street. It meets all the requirements of the R15 zoning district. They exceed 15,000 square feet, and they're able to build within the buildable area with the setbacks established for those zoning districts. So we recommend approval of the subdivision with the following stipulations: that it be conditioned upon the plat submitted, and then water and sewer connections be provided by the developer, as well as water quality. Those are all required based on our code. We just wanted it to be called out because their intent is to sell this lot to somebody else at this point.
Any questions of Rusty? Seeing none, turn it over to Mr. Lindley. Is the applicant here? Want to come up? I don't believe so. Mr. Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Rusty. I have not heard anything problematic from the neighbors. There was, I think, great relief that it is simply a lot split and not sort of a triple lot split. So good here. With that, motion do pass.
I have a motion seconded by Mr. Gould. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 6-0. Thank you. Item 5 is privileged licenses. We have none. Item 6 is formal business. 6A, RFQ 22-025, approval to award RFQ 22-025 for construction manager at risk for the downtown improvements, public green space to Winter Construction, 5616 Peachtree Road, Suite 100, Atlanta, Georgia, 30341. Mr. Bennett, the background, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Smyrna requested qualification proposals for a construction manager at risk for the downtown improvements public green space project. 4 proposals were received and evaluated by city staff from Public Works, Engineering, and Parks and Recreation. This project is managed by Croy Engineering and Pondon Company. They selected the top 3 scoring firms for interview and presentation on Monday, March 14th, 2022. Based on proposals and interviews, the evaluation team and purchasing recommend award to Winter Construction.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I'm going to turn this over. This is in Ward 3 to Councilmember Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bennett. Revetted this, the first part of the process with Croy. So with that, motion do pass.
Any discussion? All right. Motion by Mr. Lindley, seconded by Mr. Pickens. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 5-1 with Councilmember Wilkinson voting in the negative. Item B, RFQ 22-026, approval to award RFQ 22-026 for wrecker and towing services for the City of Smyrna to Barrow Wrecker, 2267 Dixie Avenue Southeast, Smyrna, Georgia 30080, for the recovery of both disabled City of Smyrna vehicles and equipment, as well as wrecker towing and storage of disabled motor vehicles or motor vehicles in violations of city, county, state law, or federal motor carrier safety violations for a period of 1 year with a renewal extension of up to 5 years, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Mr. Bennett, the background, please.
Yes, sir. The City of Smyrna requested proposals for wrecker and towing services for the city. This contract is to recover both disabled City of Smyrna vehicles and equipment and wrecker towing storage of disabled motor vehicles or motor vehicles in violation of law. The proposals were evaluated by staff from Public Works, Police, and Fire. Based on the scoring of criteria and fee proposals, it is the recommendation of purchasing and the evaluation team to award this contract to Barrow Wrecker. The wrecker towing contract is an annual contract that may be renewed up to 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Any discussion on this item? Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Pickens, seconded by Mr. Gould. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 6-0. Thank you. Item C, RFP 22-024, vote on proposals submitted for RFP 22-024 for the transfer of ownership and relocation of Aunt Fanny's Cabin. Mr. Bennett, the background, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Smyrna accepted proposals for the transfer of ownership and relocation of Aunt Fanny's Cabin, currently located at 2875 Atlanta Road Southeast, Smyrna, Georgia 30080. Interested parties were encouraged to submit proposals to take ownership of and relocate this historic building as is. An acceptable proposal included, among other items, a descriptive plan and timeline for the relocation, the property to which the building is to be relocated, relevant past experience, and proof of the financial capacity to complete the project according to the plan and timeline. It is the responsibility of the proposer to follow all applicable rules and laws regarding construction site work and relocation of property. The structure must be removed by late summer 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. This is in Ward 3, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Lindley, who co-chaired the task force, made the recommendation on Aunt Fanny's Cabin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will invite my fellow co-chair of the task force to jump in as he feels so. The committee and task force met through the fall, as the public in the room may recall. The policy decision was rendered and recommended to the council and adopted on December 20th. At that time, a deadline for RFPs was established at February 1st, and then a subsequent deadline of an additional 45 days, which took us to the middle of last week. In that time, I'm pleased that we received a number of proposals, and in fact, we received 4, 3 of which met the criteria that Mr. Bennett laid out, and it had been quite well publicized. Before I sort of get to where we are with the proposals, I do want to note this has been a long process. It has been underway in some form or fashion going back to almost a year ago, and then a prior year when you factor in the report in early 2020 when we learned of the dire condition that the cabin has been in, and then set in motion the events in the midst of a pandemic, set in motion the events that have brought us here to tonight. I do want to note that the task force was made up of not only 3 of the folks that sit up here and make up council, but there were also 3 folks from the public. So again, just want to make sure that there's been a lot of public debate and public engagement. There has not been a meeting that has gone by since December that there has not been public engagement. And roughly 100 days for folks to turn in an RFP. And I would say, as a moment of personal privilege, I wish that the passion that has been on display here in the last couple of weeks had been there over the last 24 years. The only reason we are here tonight is because the building was in a state of disrepair to where the recommendation was to either condemn it and get rid of it or spend copious tax dollars to fix it. So that's the track that got us here tonight. So again, I wish the passion that had been on display and that I'm sure we'll hear later tonight had been there over the last couple of years, because it probably could have made a difference and thwarted this entire debate and dialogue. And I would note that includes folks that actually served in this government that had the ability to make a difference and to expend funds at the time when it would not have amounted to nearly $400,000 to $600,000 to fix it. So with that, as you review the proposals, as we looked at it, the council has had roughly a week, I guess maybe a little less than a week, to review those. Of the 4, as I mentioned, 3 sort of meet the criteria that was laid out in our RFP process and administered by the professionals here on staff that do that every day. And I believe that there is one clear option that upon decision tonight, should this council reach one, that they are ready to go. And we have an end date and a move date of no later than July 1st, which is in keeping with the decision, the policy decision set forth by December 20th and a vast majority of this council. So with that, I motion that we adopt the Ashley Farms proposal and open up the debate.
Okay, we have a motion, and now entertain discussion. Mr. Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I sat on this committee. My biggest disagreement at this point is with the process of going through the selection of these 4 proposals that we got, and we say 3, one of them did not meet all the criteria. But in item 6A, the city administrator went through a process, and the proposals came in. They went before several different people for review and scoring, and they made a recommendation. Well, that's not what happened here. The proposals came in. Thursday night of last week, I suggested that we go through a scoring process to make a recommendation for tonight's meeting, and I was told that we would have a motion and a vote tonight. And I disagree with that. I think we should have gone through at least a scoring process for these to determine which was the best proposal to accept, and that's all I have to say on this subject.
Mr. Wheaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the co-chair, I guess, of that initial committee, one of the things that I really appreciated about that effort and that work was the community engagement that really focused on thinking about her history and how we can move forward in really telling her story and story of other Black residents in this city that have just done tremendous work in really trying to promote the city, work for the city, work with the city in a lot of different capacities. And so that to me is an exciting moment we have here. There's been a lot of, as Councilmember Lindley mentioned, there's been a lot of passion related to this issue on both sides. People that are definitely supportive of the cabin and keeping it right where it is. People that are definitely passionate about removing the cabin. And that has been very clear to all of us. But even within that, there's a really beautiful common ground. I've always been somebody who loves compromise, and I really do believe that there is great common ground among those 2 differing opinions. And that common ground has been clear. It's about the need to really honor Fannie Williams, which we are certainly in the process of doing with the other committee that we have that is actively running right now. I am supportive of the proposal, the Ashley Farms proposal. I think it's a good one for us to consider, and being able to move forward with that allows us to do something unique, right? We're able to actually strike a medium where the cabin isn't destroyed, it's just relocated. And we're still able to, as a city, on that site, potentially honor her and honor so many other people. It's this one space, I think, where there's actually a unique compromise point that was a little unexpected. And hopefully we can move forward collectively in that way. Just a question, maybe this, whether for Scott or Joe, just about the next steps. If we were to vote on approval of one of these, I think maybe an explicit point of exactly what follows would be good.
So I can make a stab at that. So if you guys awarded one of these, then the next step would be for us to get with the person that made the proposal and hammer out a contract with them, which will be very straightforward, just like we do with other RFPs.
Right. So I think, with the ability to, if we're able to move forward and find agreement on the Ashley Farms proposal, that's great, but it would also be good if there were problems there to be able to potentially go back and review other proposals along the process. I think that would be really an important part to this if something were to fall apart there.
Thank you, Dr. Wheaton. Ms. Wilkinson.
So is that a possibility, Scott, after we've already voted on?
Is what a possibility you're asking?
To look at other options?
Yeah, what you would do is say you would vote on an option today, and if that option is approved, then we go and hammer out a contract. If either we're unable to hammer out a contract, which we wouldn't be, or if they didn't perform, then you would bring the other proposals back to another meeting and then vote on those proposals then.
Okay.
Mr. Lindley,
Thank
you okay adding that to your motion?
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Wilkinson.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want people to know that of the 4 proposals, this was the first I heard of the proposal that was going to be the motion made on it, and I'm really disappointed about that because we haven't really discussed the proposals in the meeting, and then also I heard was there earlier.
Your mic out?
Oh.
I think your mic's
It's
not.
okay. I'm sorry. Is this better? Okay, sorry. So the first thing I said was this proposal for this particular, to accept this proposal tonight was the first time I've heard it, just a few minutes ago when Councilman Lindley made the motion. I'm disappointed about that process, and I've been disappointed about the process all along. I also heard Councilman Lindley talk about the passion that is here in the community, and he wishes that passion had come out before now, but to me, it's not really too late. The discussion needed to happen, and it is happening, and it isn't too late for us to do something about it as a community in terms of if it's the finances. I mean, it's like if there's a will, there's a way. And I've just heard a lot from the community. I've heard a lot of information about Fannie Williams that I never knew before, even though I lived in the city since 1986. And it's information I just don't think was communicated or talked about. So I just feel like that it's just not the discussion is still here, and I am proud that we're having those discussions. But once we vote for this building, I think it's too late. I mean, I think that I think I put some information here. It's like, how do we preserve history when the physical space is no longer there? And I've been looking up information about Brent Leggs. He's an American architectural historian, and he's involved with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and just some of the things that he's dedicated to in terms of preserving spaces for African Americans. And I've just heard a lot of people talk about it, in their experiences and why it's valuable. Also, I've read things from a member of the board of the Smyrna Historical Society that just sent us something last week, and the value of the building in terms of an educational standpoint. And I just think all of these things are so important, and we didn't have them until recently. A lot of the information since the vote in December has come out. So I just don't feel like it's too late to have these conversations, but once we vote, I am concerned that it will be too late. And I know there's people out there that feel strongly both ways, but I am kind of curious with the audience that we have here tonight, if you're here because you support the preservation of the cabin and where it is. I just would like for you to stand up. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate in these interesting and passionate arguments how folks come out on both sides, and it's one of the things, again, I've said many times, that makes our community a great place to live. People care about our city, and they care about the decisions that we make. So, and with that notion, the mayor formed a committee to honor Fannie Williams. Myself and Councilmember Wheaton are on that committee, along with faith leaders, citizens, and other community advocates, with our goal of finding a way to suitably honor the life accomplishments of Fannie Williams, and particularly form some living programs, something that can be educational tools and inspiration for all sorts of folks from walks of life around the city, but probably particularly our young folks. Lewis and I have an affinity for schools, and particularly middle schools, and so we'll see what the committee brings forth, but I would expect that we'd have programming that will, again, help teach the life lessons of Fannie Williams around courage and compassion, entrepreneurship, and so many others. So we look forward to that continue to work throughout the year. One thing about, in my opinion, on the cabin, I've said this before, there's two main core issues for me personally. One is the cost to refurbish the cabin. It's a lot of money, and as Councilmember Lindley said, we probably didn't need to be in this position, but we are. And secondly, probably more importantly, even with the number of folks in this room that are supportive of having an alternative solution to the cabin, there's a lot of folks in the city that don't see it that way. This cabin was used as a restaurant and used the likeness of Fannie Williams for almost 45 to 50 years after her death in 1949. It was for the glorification, in my opinion, the glorification of the antebellum era that's long gone, and it's not distasteful, to say the least. Practiced demeaning marketing habits of young African-American boys, and the list goes on. So with some positive things around the cabin, there's also some really strong negative aspects that many people see. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm supportive of the motion. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pickens?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just say that I'm in support of Councilman Lindsley's motion to award it to this RFP. I think they're the most concise, and that they've given the most details on what they were looking for and when they were going to move the cabin, and they're responding to the council's directive that we made a few months ago. So.
Okay. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Lindley. Mr. Lindley, you want to we've got a second. Mr. Gould has seconded your motion. You want to restate your motion, adding the language that Dr. Wheaton suggested?
Yes, and I'll enlist our city attorney to make sure there's no nuance, but motion to award the winning bid to Ashley Farms with the provision that if once we enter negotiations, should that break down or it be apparent that they will not be able to fulfill the move as they've outlined, then the council will go back to the two remaining bids.
Okay. Motion seconded by Mr. Gould. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 4-2 with Mr. Welch and Ms. Wilkinson voting in the negative. Thank you, everybody. Item 7 is commercial building permits. We have none. Item 8 is the consent agenda. Mr. Bennett, can you please read the consent agenda for council approval?
Yes, sir. Item A, MIN 2022-16, approval of the March 3rd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Item B, MIN 2022-17, approval of the March 7th, 2022 pre-council meeting minutes. Item C, MIN 2022-18, approval of the March 7th, 2022 council meeting minutes. Item D, 2022-159, authorization for Judge Phyllis Collins to swear in Judge Roger Rosen to act as presiding judge over the bonding company hearings. Item E, 2022-131, authorization of road closure that will take place from April 4th, 2022 through April 8th, 2022 for the install of a raised crosswalk at Powder Springs Street and Hughes Street, and the reinstall of an existing speed table at Campbell High on Powder Springs Street. Item F, 2022-162, authorization of street closures of the Upper Market Village around the Fountain area, as well as use of the street and center landscape section along West Spring Street from the Circle to the midsection at Cafe Lucia from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. on Saturday, June 25th, 2022 for the Smyrna is Fabulous event. Item G, 2022-164, authorization of a request from Smyrna First Methodist Church to close Church Street between King Street and Memorial Place from 7 a.m. through 2 p.m. for the safety of participants in their Easter egg hunt scheduled for Saturday, April 16th, 2022. Item H, 2022-170, approval of the cancellation of the April 4th, 2022 Mayor and Council meeting due to a lack of a quorum. Item I, AGR 2022-05, approval for the Georgia DOT Memorandum of Agreement for pedestrian lighting on State Route 280, South Cobb Drive at Windy Hill Road intersection, City of Smyrna, Georgia, Cobb County, for the installation of 4 pedestrian luminaries on 4 new aluminum poles, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. And item J, AGR 2022-06, approval of the independent contractor agreement with Jerry Pearlstein, private address, Marietta, Georgia, for the monthly inspection of 23 playgrounds, with reports to begin April 1st, 2022, and commence month to month until terminated with a 30-day written notice from either party, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Pickens. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 6-0. Item 9 is ward and committee reports, and we'll start tonight with Mr. Glenn Pickens.
Thanks, Mayor. No report this evening.
Mr. Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to note the passing of a longtime Smyrna resident, Mr. Gene McCord, who was a longtime pillar of our community, a pillar of the leadership at First Baptist Church, was the longtime scoutmaster to Troop 88, for which I was proud to have been under his stead for many years. He died this past week at the age of 85, just a couple of months short of 86, and he'll be sorely missed.
Mr. Welch.
No report this evening.
Ms. Wilkinson.
I would like to also, I want to talk about Women's History Month a little bit more. I'm so proud of everyone that came out tonight, the business owners and the diversity that we have in our community. I think women have come a long way, and I just want to say that when I grew up, in the 70s, that women were legally discriminated against. And for example, they could lose their jobs if they became pregnant. I remember that. I remember my cousin that worked for Delta, not as a flight attendant, but in the offices. And when she became pregnant, she could no longer work there. So I'm just saying things have come a long way. Women couldn't get credit cards back then. And they also couldn't, nor could they work in running the Boston Marathon. So I'm proud to see the changes that we made, and we have more work to do. I also want to say that in our council, when I was doing research, we've had one woman mayor back in the World War II. I think it was about 1946. And then since then, the 80s, from my research, I could only find 8 women have served on the council. So with that, I also want to encourage some of these women that are involved in our community to think about that in the future. So I went to NLC last week, National League of Cities, and there is a city in New Mexico that is all women. So anyway, that was really kind of neat to see. Thank you. With that, I yield.
Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to give a plug out for the upcoming golf outing for the Campbell High School Education Foundation. It's the annual fundraiser. It's a major fundraiser for the foundation. Foundation provides funding for a counselor at Campbell High School, a much-needed career counselor at Campbell High School, and also fulfills education needs as identified by Dr. Walker, the principal. So if you have any interest in sponsoring a hole, playing, or just donating, please reach out to me. Thank you.
Dr. Wheaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Definitely want to thank, Council Member Wilkinson for that really good comment related to Women's History Month. I really appreciate that. And every time Women's History Month comes around, I definitely think of my mother, who is watching right now from North Carolina. So shout out to Mom. Thank you for everything you've done and the impact you've made as well in the communities that you've been in. And with that, I yield.
Joe?
No, sir.
Mr. Cochran? Ms. Penny? Heather?
Yes, sir.
Anything about the election or?
We had 5 candidates qualified 2 weeks ago, and the upcoming election will be held on May 24th at the Smyrna Baptist Church.
All right, that concludes our ward and committee reports. Number 10 is show cause hearings. We have none. Number 11 is citizen input. We have several folks signed up to speak. We'll start tonight with Ms. Lisa Castleberry. Make sure your microphone's on. Just hit that button right there.
Is it a hello?
There we
Okay.
go. Yes, ma'am.
Lisa Castleberry. Right now, I'm happy that it's being relocated to Ansley Farms. I was just praying that it wasn't going to be relocated to Rose Garden. But actually, I was for it being demolished. And I'm just glad tonight that some things that I know and I have witnesses of things that went on in that restaurant against women, the workers. We never wanted that place in Rose Garden. So I'm just happy right now that things have gone on the way they have. And I hope it's over. I hope it's over. I hope it's over because we're working on something beautiful for Fannie Williams. I would not stand here and not let her be honored. And I'm just happy right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castleberry. Ms. Shawn Martin. No. Ms. Maryline Blackburn. Okay. Pat Burns.
My name is Pat Burns. I live in a historic district. As a member of the Coalition to Save Aunt Fanny's Cabin, I'm at peace with the destination and the next chapter in its life. I'm thankful it was not bulldozed as initially explained to us. The goal is to reclaim the cabin as a center for reconciliation, to tell the full narrative of Smyrna's Black history, while dovetailing with Smyrna's racial trust building. This was not met, however. Without the cabin walls and foundation, the full story of Jim Crow, the full story of Fannie Williams, the full story of the offensive acts that were just talked about by the previous speaker will not be met. The coalition takes its cue from Fannie Williams, her strength and vision to better her Black brothers and sisters and the entire community. I believe in the power of preservation. I believe space needs to be reclaimed to tell the full narrative, to eventually bring about enlightenment, and I trust
that in the future we will not be scolded as for being involved in the community. I felt very scolded tonight. We did not know that the cabin was in this state until it was ready to be bulldozed. So feeling scolded is just a feeling. It's the same feeling that people have who worked in the cabin. It's real. So I would hope that there might be some apology from the city council members.
Miss Betty Williams. Jenny Barty.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to thank you for not having Aunt Fannie's cabin demolished. This 132-year-old building has survived so much and has such an incredible story that largely remains unknown to our city and to the wider world. We can only hope that the word gets out, telling the story of Fannie Williams in the continued quest for racial harmony and reconciliation. Most of us, or many of us, are wondering what the big rush is to remove the cabin from where it stands and where it belongs, right next to our city's history museum. It seems to physically inhabit the space perfectly and sit right next to the museum that seeks to tell the story of Smyrna. Fannie Williams deserves her own amazing story to be told far and wide, and I trust that you will commemorate her contributions to the city in a thoughtful way. Now, the real question we want answered is, what is the plan for this space? It is obvious that there must be a reason the structure that's been part of Smyrna for so long needs to go, and very quickly. I ask that you be honest and open and let residents know what's in the works. What will be put in that prime, albeit small, spot in Smyrna? The Coalition to Save Aunt Fannie's Cabin did not set out to be an opposition group. Our goal has been to inform the community of the true story of Aunt Fannie's Cabin and its namesake. We wish this could have been a collaborative effort, but we have found that you as mayor and some council members have not even been willing to consider keeping the structure where it now sits with a little bit of rehabilitation. Not very much in the grand scheme of things. Along with other members of the group, and speaking also as a member of Smart Smyrna, I must say that we love the city and we wish for its community-oriented feel to continue, but this requires a mayor and a council that are truly representative of the people in the town, and we honestly feel that we have not been served in this way. Why is it, Mr. Mayor, that you say thank you to everyone who speaks at the citizen input time when their views align with yours, and you just say your time is up to everybody else? You can watch on the videos, every video. I've noticed this pattern. Why is it? Okay, so please listen to the people. Council, please, there is an election coming up. We want you to stay aboard if you're truly committed to the citizenry. Okay, you've been voting in lockstep about everything. Okay, please, I so appreciate those of you who show some initiative and stand up for the right thing for Smyrna. Thank you all very much for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Barty, for your comments. I will say one thing. We've been very clear throughout this process about what's going to become of the space where the cabin is currently, and that is specifically to honor and memorialize Fannie Williams. So there's nothing else going to happen there except that. And Mr. Gould is chairing the committee now to make a recommendation to council about the best way to do that. Next is, I see Mary Lynn Blackburn came back in. I called you earlier. You weren't here, but I'd like to invite you up now.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mayoral Blackburn, a resident of Smyrna. Been here for 22 years. And, you know, I have not seen this many
Black people in this council since I was sworn in as as a representative for Ward 3. So at least we were able to bring them out for that. Now, I ask that each of you give me your undivided attention. Please, do not text, lower your head, your eyes, but please, as I speak, look at me. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Now, it's my opinion that it's just respectful that you look at someone who's addressing you individually or as a body. Now that you've made your decision to rid Smyrna of what you believe is its dark, disgusting past, you have just disregarded and disrespected the African American community and the history that helped to build the city. It is truly unfortunate that you have shared a narrative that does not encompass the whole entire true story of Fannie Williams and the cabin. And furthermore, one of the photos in which was shared amongst the task force, it was never in the cabin. Now, if anything, the community deserves to know the truth, something in which you are able to do, but you choose not to. So, I ask that you take the time to think about the decision that you've just made. You've just divided the African American community. What I just witnessed outside was uncalled for. What you should have done was to have a community meeting for everybody to come to, not just a 6-member task force that supposedly went out and talked to the community, but bring people together so that we could discuss this, not fight, not divide. And that's exactly what you've done.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburn, for your comments. Triana Arnold James.
Good evening. Y'all don't have to look at me. I'm fine. My name is Triana Arnold James. As soon as I can get my notes here. I'm going to talk to you all a little bit. Also known as Louise Cooper granddaughter. That's what, for so many years that I was here, that was my name. I didn't know my real name. I was always called Louise Cooper granddaughter, who lived in the city of Smyrna for 95 years. My uncles, most of my uncles, and my mom worked and retired from the city of Smyrna. A part of my story is growing up here in the city, and I take pride in that. I remember hearing stories about Aunt Fannie's cabin. Some good, some bad, mostly bad. As we all know, Fannie Williams was a civil rights activist and beloved figure in the Cobb County area before she died in 1949. The restaurant represents exploitation with a Southern twist, in my humble opinion. The reason, and so many others in the Black community were underpaid and used. Miss Williams worked for the Campbell family, was instrumental in raising funds for a medical hospital, and a working member of the historical Wheat Street Baptist Church. We should honor our ancestors and those that came before us in museums and memorials, not a representation of misappropriation. Unlike my grandmother, Mother Louise Cooper, who worked for over 30 years for George's Restaurant on Atlanta Road, Mr. George Segales, the owner, compensated my grandmother financially well for all of her years of service. That didn't happen to Fannie Williams. I honor and appreciate Black women like Fannie Williams, my grandmother, Mother Louise Cooper, Mother Annie Mae Dukes, Mother Ernestine Jones, Mother Carrie Hammond, Mother Lipsy, who was here tonight, and so many other, countless others. Anyone on a train to rebuild Aunt Fannie's cabin in its present form need to move on. We are in 2022.
a time to honor and memorialize. We can't progress by looking backwards or standing still or jumping on an Alaskan train with no funds and resources. Marilyn Blackburn suggested that it be moved to Rose Garden, which is an asinine idea, a plan she never had when she was a part of this council. She dropped the ball on so many issues regarding the Black community, including the Mount Zion Cemetery. You have to question her motive. The citizens and the children of Rose Garden deserves better. Fannie Williams deserves better. Smyrna, is that my time? I believe that's my time. One more thing, and I'll be done. Smyrna is about recognizing the past, working within the present, and progressing toward the future. I was born and raised here. There are those that are passionate about this issue that was not born and raised in the city of Smyrna. And as an accountant, looking at the numbers, if the city spent $500,000 on taxpayer dollars, can it be recouped within 3 to 5 year time frame? I don't believe so, looking at the numbers. I support the decision to move Aunt Fannie's cabin, for which it was abandoned for over 20 years. I would rather honor Miss Fannie Williams with a memorial marker in the museum or naming a street for her namesake. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all tonight. The city of Smyrna will always be a special place in my heart. God bless you, God bless the state of Georgia, and God bless our troops.
Thank you, Ms. James. Ms. Kathy Young, that's our last speaker this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and our staff. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Kathy Young, and I live at 5007 Highland Oaks Court in Ward 7. I appreciate what Dr. Wheaton said earlier in terms of focusing on moving forward, finding the common ground that, even though this is a very divisive issue, that we can find. And I serve on the committee to honor Fannie Williams, and I honestly had some hesitancy in accepting that request because it's such a divisive issue, but it's all that much more important, I think, to get as much information as we can that's actually factual and will do a good job in honoring Fannie Williams. And so I'd hope that more people would have stayed in the chamber, but I know this will be in the record. But now that I've stepped into that group, which is a great group, I just hope that more people will look towards the positive things that we can do and hope to find a good way forward. So thank you very much, and good luck with the next steps, and just thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Young. That concludes citizen input. If there's no business to be brought before this body, any further, we're adjourned at 8:22.